والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise and thanks belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May the peace and blessing of Allah be upon His servant and final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As to our follows, my dear respected brothers in Islam, I wanted to share with you a few reflections from one ayah that belongs to Surah Ra'd, and this is the second ayah we recited in the first rak'ah, and it's counted as in a part of the examples of the Quran from Amthal fil Quran. And the study of the examples in the Quran is something really difficult. It's a task on its own, and this is why many ulama in the past just made books entirely dedicated just to explain the examples in the Quran. And Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَتِلْكَ الْأَمْثَالُ نَضْرِبُهَا لِلنَّاسِ وَمَا يَعْقِلُهَا إِلَّا الْعَالِمُونَ. That this is how we give our examples, and this is how we strike the examples for the people, and only those who are deeply rooted in knowledge would understand them. So obviously the ulama in past have explained these examples, and it takes a bit of effort to read and understand. And this one is somehow, it's an extremely difficult example, but it really describes the situation that we currently live. And this is what I wanted to share with you. It's the ayah, أنزل من السماء ماء فسالت أودية بقدرها فاحتمل السيل زبد الرابية, until the end of it. Now that's an example. Now I'll give you a rough translation first, and then we'll decode it and see what is Allah Azza wa Jalla really saying. So he says by the beginning of this ayah, أنزل من السماء ماء. He sent down water from the sky. He sent down rain from the sky. فَسَالَتْ أَوْدِيَةٌ بِقَدَرِهَا. And obviously when the rain comes down, there are valleys. There are valleys. And so the valleys filled to their measure. فَسَالَتْ أَوْدِيَةٌ بِقَدَرِهَا. The rain is coming down and it fills up the valley slowly, and now the valley is full of water. So then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَاحْتَمَلَ السَّيْلُ زَبَدَ الرَّابِيَةِ. فَاحْتَمَلَ السَّيْلُ زَبَدَ الرَّابِيَةِ. Now this water that has come down, now it begins to move, and as it's moving, it's picking up a zabad. A zabad is the scum, the filth that's on the earth. Like for example, broken twigs, broken leaves, dead leaves, dirt, that stuff, that's called zabad. Zabad is the foam, the froth, that scum that is on the earth, that when the rain comes down, you'll see it as it moves down like the flood waters, you'll see on top of it all these twigs and all these leaves, and it's just running down with it. That's a zabad. فَاحْتَمَلَ السَّيْلُ زَبَدَ الرَّابِيَةِ. Rabia comes from the word riba yarbu, which means that it rises to the top. احْتَمَلَ السَّيْلُ زَبَدَ الرَّابِيَةِ. It carried this scum, and it took it all the way up until the top. Now it became on the top. فَاحْتَمَلَ السَّيْلُ زَبَدَ الرَّابِيَةِ. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَمِمَّا يُوقِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِي النَّارِ. So now Allah Azza wa Jalla goes from one scene to another. So what you're imagining right now is valleys, and the valleys filled with water, and the water began to move down, and there is all this foam on top of the water as it goes down. Allah Azza wa Jalla cut that scene and went to like a factory. A blacksmith is working in the factory. وَمَّا يُوقِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِي النَّارِ. He's telling us now of another foam that happens. But this foam now happens as a result of مِمَّا يُوقِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِي النَّارِ. It's a foam that occurs that when you put lots of metal and when you put metal in and you put it inside of the machine, and then you have really high temperatures from underneath, then the metal there's pure and impure metals, and so they put it under some extreme temperature so that the impurities of the metal would rise to the top and the pure metal would come out from the other end. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَمِمَّا يُوقِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِي النَّارِ ابْتِغَاءَ حِلْيَةٍ أَوْ مَتَاعٍ زَبَدٌ مِثْلُهُ. So he spoke to us in the first part of the ayah of, let's call it a cool froth that would happen, and foam that would happen as a result of something cool, which is the water. The other froth and the other foam that he's speaking about is one that happens as a result of intense heat. You put the metal inside, and then it will come out on the other end, ابتغاء حلية, in pursuit of hilya, of jewelry, or mata' equipment, utensil, like for example spoons and forks and so on. So you put the metal inside under extreme temperature, and then froth rises up the top. That's the impurities. And then after this, the good stuff comes out, and they make from that jewelry, hilyatin aw mata', and other stuff that is used. Then Allah Azza wa Jal says, كَذَلِكَ يَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْحَقَّ وَالْبَاطِلِ. This is how Allah Azza wa Jal gives the example of the truth and of what is false. Now that's very difficult to understand. What does all this have to do with al-haq and al-batil? So let's decode this and what exactly is it referring to. The first part, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. This is referring to the Quran coming down from the sky. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in the hadith, إِنَّ مَثَلَ مَا بَعَثَنِ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى بِهِ مِنَ الْهُدَى وَالْعِلْمِ مَثَلُ غَيْثٍ أَصَابَ أَرْضًا. He said in a hadith that the example of that which I was sent with, which is the Quran min al-huda wal-ilm, from the knowledge and the guidance, is the example of water that strikes the earth. So there is in the hadith that the rain has been compared to the Quran. So أنزل من السماء ماء, that is Allah Azza wa Jal sent down from the sky the Quran. فسالت أودية بقدرها. The Quran and the message filled the valleys. You know, the Quran, when it was revealed in a valley, which is in Mecca on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what Allah Azza wa Jal is saying at the beginning of the ayah is that the Quran was sent down and the message filled the valleys of Mecca. It filled it so much that it began to stream in the streets and in the roads of Mecca. Everyone knew about the message. It wasn't something that was covered, it was exposed, everyone knew about it. And then Allah Azza wa Jal said, Zabad al-Rabi'a. Zabad is as we said, is the foam. Now that foam is like, you think of them as the Kuffar Mecca. They became exposed. They rose above the message, they didn't want to take the message. And the water, obviously, that is the mu'minun, the believers, that the earth takes it in. So what happened is, the first part of the ayah is speaking about the Prophet ﷺ's life in Mecca. That was his life. When the Quran came down and it was spread, the kuffar automatically distanced themselves away from it. It wasn't difficult. The kafir would say, I'm a kafir. And the believer would say, I'm a believer. It's not a difficult situation. So the zabad is up the top, the scum is up the top, and down the bottom is where the believers are. Then the other one that Allah Azza wa Jal gave, the other example, in the second part of the ayah, is that when the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca, he didn't live there for so long that he was exiled, he was kicked out of Mecca to Medina. When he went to Medina, the problem over there was he's not dealing now with kuffar, he was dealing with worse than kuffar, which is the Quranic name for them, Munafiqun. They were Munafiqun. And the Munafiqun is a very difficult process to separate them from the believers. So Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَمِمَّا يُوقِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِي النَّارِ ابْتِغَاءَ حِلْيَةٍ أَوْ مَتَاعٍ زَبَدٌ مِثْلُهُ. The only way that the Munafiqun, which would be the foam that is in Medina, that froth, that scum, it'll only distance itself from the pure metal. The only way that would happen is that if everyone was to go underneath the fire, if everyone was to be put underneath extreme temperature. So what that means is that Allah Azza wa Jal, to separate the Munafiqun from the believers in Medina, everyone was trialed, including the believers. And these were like the wars, like Ghazwat, for example, Badr and Uhud and the Ahzab and Tabuk and so on. All these wars, it wasn't easy upon the believers, but it was something difficult as well. Allah Azza wa Jal says, هُنَالِكَ ابْتُلِيَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَزُلْزِلُوا زِلْزَالًا شَدِيدًا. And the only reason that happened is so that Allah Azza wa Jal separates the Munafiqun, who the Munafiqun are, from the believers. So, you know how I told you the first part is the cool foam. Because the kafir, very simple. Not everyone has to go through a test so the kafir can be exposed as being a kafir. He's very proud of it and he'll say, I'm a kafir. Even nowadays, some of the tattoo kafir on his hand or on his chest or whatever. It's very easy. But the munafiq, the problem is they don't testify to themselves as being hypocrites. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ آمَنَّا. They're immersed deep inside of the Muslim community and they're still there and they'd say we believe. So the only way they are exposed if everyone went under the fire, under extreme temperature. And this is exactly the case of, you can say, of what happened today or what happens today in these days. That Allah Azza wa Jalla, He tests everyone. He tests all the believers. If you're to see in like for example in the Middle East and so on, that's right. Believers are going to suffer. Believers are going to suffer. And all that of whatever refugees and everyone that's coming out of their lands, that's all suffering. But that all needs to happen So that the zabad, the scum of that part, in order for it to rise, everyone needs to go under the test. Then and only we can identify who the hypocrite is and who the true believer is. So Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَمِمَّا يُوقِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِي النَّارِ ابْتِغَاءَ حِلْيَةٍ. Now, when the believer goes through this test, there is only two outcomes on the other end. There's only two ways he can come out. Either ابتغاء حِلْيَةٍ أو متاع. And you know, this is the example of when the believers went through war. You know, if a believer went through jihad, through war, there is only two outcomes on the other side. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions this in Surah As-Saf. He says, هَلْ أَدُلُّكُمْ عَلَى تِجَارَةٍ تُنْجِيكُم مِّنْ عَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Shall I tell you of a business deal that would save you from a tormentful punishment? Then he says, تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَتُجَاهِدُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. What is the reward after this? يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَيُدْخِلْكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ. So that ابتغاء حِلْيَةٍ is like that shahada, the martyrdom that one would take and one would maybe meet on the battlefield, and that is al-hilya. أو متاع is the nasr. وأخرى تحبونها نصر من الله وفتح قريب. So after the war there can only be two outcomes, either a shahada or either, and that is like the jewelry, that's because that's going straight towards the paradise, or the mata', which is like what we said, the spoons and the fork, that would be the أخرى تحبونها نصر من الله. The secondary would be the victory and the success you take on that battlefield. So then Allah Azza wa Jalla said, كَذَلِكَ يَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْحَقَّ وَالْبَاطِلِ. Very beautiful. The first part of the ayah is the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Mecca. The Kuffar were very distinguished from the Muslimin. And the second part of the ayah is his life in Medina. And it was a bit difficult to distance the Munafiqun from the believers. Everyone had to go through that fire. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla said, كَذَلِكَ يَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْحَقَّ وَالْبَاطِلِ. Now he said, فَأَمَّا الزَّبَدُ فَيَذْهَبُ جُفَاءً. So now he speaks to us about Mecca. He says, as for the zabad, which is the kuffar in Mecca, فَيَذْهَبُ جُفَاءً. They won't last, they will go. وَأَمَّا مَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسَ فَيَمْكُثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And what would benefit the people would remain in the earth. And what benefits the people? The believers, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his da'wah. And until now that is remaining over there in Mecca. It hasn't exchanged for anyone yet. So that zabad, the kuffar of Mecca, Quraysh, Allah Azza wa Jal said, يَذْهَبُ جُفَاءً. It went. وَأَمَّا مَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسَ. And when it benefits the people, يَمْكُثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. It remains in the earth. And then he said, كَذَلِكَ يَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالِ. That's how Allah Azza wa Jal gives examples. But you see, what's also amazing is that Allah told us the situation of Mecca, that the Quraysh would go away and the believers would remain in Mecca. But He never told us about the Munafiqun and what happens to them. You know why? Because until now they're still there. So He didn't say anything about it. Because every single time and in every single place and age and time, this would always repeat. مِمَّا يُوقِدُونَ عَلَيْهِ فِي النَّارِ ابْتِغَاءَ حِلْيَةٍ أَوْ مَتَاعٍ زَبَدٌ مِثْلُهُ. And the only reason this happens is so that Allah Azza wa Jal can bring up to the top a zabad, which is the scum, and that would be the munafiqun. But everyone had to go through the test. And this is the way Allah Azza wa Jal gives the examples, really awesome, beautiful examples. This is just one of many in the Quran, in where you really find a reality. It describes the past, it describes the present, and it describes the future in all times and all places. These ayahs are always relevant. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people of the Quran, people who benefit from the reminders of the Quran. إنه ولي ذلك القادر عليه. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.